In advance of Alabama's showdown with Texas A&M for the top spot in the SEC Western Division standings on Saturday, it is the other side right here on the YouTube and podcast homes for BamaOnline.com. And with that, it is my pleasure to welcome on board Olin Buchanan, a staple of Texas A&M coverage for many years now. Olin has been a multimedia voice for TexAgs since 2012. Previously, a national college football writer for Rivals.com and Yahoo, also worked for Bryan College Station Eagle and the Austin American Statesman. Olin, also a longtime voter for the Heisman Trophy. With all that out of the way, Olin, good stuff, by the way. It's been a
Thanks.
while since we've caught up. Good to do this.
Yeah, I can remember sitting up there, Bryant Denny Stadium press box next to you. You were pointing out um, some different things that I might have missed.
Yeah, it could have
So
been. Yeah.
go back that far.
Many,
Yeah.
many years ago, no doubt about it. And as we look at this matchup, A&M, like Alabama, coming in at 4-1, 2-0 in the SEC standings. You know, for both these teams, Olin, week 2 wasn't especially kind. A&M loses on the road at Miami. Alabama sustains a very rare home loss, especially in the month of September, to another Texas team, incoming SEC member, the Texas Longhorns. Since then, though, the Aggies and the Crimson Tide have put together double-digit conference wins. So, Owen, we'll get a little more granular as we go along here. But what's been the overriding theme in A&M, despite losing starting quarterback Connor Weigman a couple weeks ago in that win over Auburn, seemingly finding its footing now in SEC play?
I think they've gotten more aggressive on defense. I think it really starts there. Um, I don't know that they will admit it, but they sure seemed like they were playing pretty passively on defense against Miami. They weren't attacking. And quite frankly, Tyler Van Dyke had plenty of time to do what he wanted to do, and he did what he wanted to do. And I think, I don't know if DJ Durkin just saw the light or if Jimbo Fisher helped him see it. But after that, they became a much more aggressive on defense. And as you know, because I know you keep up with everything, 14 sacks in the last 2 games, 30 tackles for loss. I think they figured out, hey, you know what? The strength of this defense is they have some really good, really high level defensive linemen and some improved linebackers. So why not let those guys attack instead of sitting back?
Absolutely. And you said it, 30 tackles for loss. And that's going to be, I think, a big part of this game on Saturday, really for both these defenses. They want to put these offenses behind schedule because, as we know, Jimbo Fisher, a Nick Saban disciple, both these guys want to be balanced on offensively. Perhaps the one defense that takes the other offense out of its comfort zone the most is going to have the best chance to win this game. But let's talk offense, because this marriage of Jimbo Fisher and Bobby Petrino. You know, A&M checks in at a respectable 6th in the SEC in total offense right now, 4th in scoring offense. So far, so good, I guess. Even in the loss to Miami, from what I could see, the offense had its moments and just some critical turnovers that seemed to spell doom for the Aggies in that one.
Yeah, turnovers and just some boneheaded plays. You're going to go for it on 4th and goal from the 1, and a guy jumps because he can't hold his water. Right? You complete a pass at the 5-yard line. You need 3. You need 3 yards for a first down. The guy's got it. All he has to do is literally cut up field and take a step forward. First down, maybe a touchdown, and he decides to dance. And you're like, and it's one of your best players, and you're like, well, son, what are you doing? Missed field goals, a lot of false starts. That's been a problem all year long, and you always keep that. And then you mentioned a turnover. They're going on 3rd and 1, and a guy fumbles, and it leads to a Miami touchdown. They were able to move the ball. It was just they keep talking about shooting themselves in the foot. Well, they ought to be walking on their ankles by now because they've shot themselves in the foot. And yet, despite that, they're sitting pretty good. And it just begs the question. It stokes the imaginations. What could these guys be if they just get out of their own way? If they just reduce the pre-snap penalties. And it's one thing if the turnover is because your opponent made a great play, but when it's because you botched a handoff exchange, or I don't know if you saw the Arkansas game last week with a pick six. Clearly, not everybody knew what the play was or on the same page. Things like that, you're thinking, you keep hearing these are easy fixes. Well, when are you going to fix them?
Yeah, 3 more turnovers against Arkansas last week. You scored 2 non-offensive touchdowns, right? That helps you overcome that sort of
Yeah.
production from a turnover perspective. But offensively for A&M, Olin, much was made of the weaponry that this offense was set to return. I know losing Donovan Green in the preseason was a blow, but there's quality depth there at tight end with Jake Johnson and Max Wright.
Yep.
Getting Ainias Smith back from injury to go along with Evan Stewart and Moose Muhammad and those other guys on the outside certainly was a positive. And it looked like Max Johnson made good use of all those guys in the Aggies win over the Razorbacks last week.
He did. Max has played well. Saved just a couple plays that, quite frankly, some of them weren't his fault, but he's played well. You don't ever want to lose your starting quarterback, of course, but A&M is in a pretty decent spot when you can turn to Max Johnson, who's been a reasonably successful quarterback in the SEC before from his time at LSU. He's a good player. And I always thought you could win with him. I felt like the difference was you kind of could win because of Connor Wigman. And maybe Max can go out there and prove you can win because of him. He has thrown the ball well. He threw the ball well last week. And he runs when he has to, and he can run well when he has to. So, he's a guy that, again, you don't ever want to lose your starting quarterback, but you're not going to ever use as an excuse that you lost is because you had Max Johnson at quarterback. You should still go out and feel like you're going to win. Max is a good player.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that a couple of years ago was Zach Calzada at quarterback was able to knock off then ranked number 1 Alabama in College Station. So I'm guessing the Aggies feel more than good about having a guy like Max Johnson in there for Connor Weigman. We talk about Ainias Smith. He missed last year's game against Alabama with an injury. He's had some interesting comments here in the last day or so. Obviously, goodwill not exactly flowing from the younger brother, a former Alabama player, Mo Smith, as it relates to Maurice's experience with Nick Saban a few years back. I'll say this for Smith, though. He's done some of his best work against Alabama. We talked about not being available a year ago, but in the previous 2 matchups with the Crimson Tide, 12 catches for 208 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's before you take his return ability into account, as we saw, and as certainly Arkansas would attest to after last week. What has his return meant, I guess, for not just the offense, but special teams as well?
Well, just for the team in general, because there's so much respect for Ainias, right? And I think they missed I think leadership's one of those things that gets overblown, right? But I think they certainly missed it last year in that debacle of a season that they had. And I'm not saying they would have been a 10-win team with Ainias, but maybe you would have found a way to win one more game at least and get into a bowl. Ainias is, quite frankly, perhaps their best player. Maybe not, but if he's not, the best player's in the top 2 or 3, right? And last year, Devon Achane was their best player, but Ainias would have been next. So having him back, and quite frankly, he wouldn't be back if he hadn't gotten hurt last year, right? He came back because you're not going to go into the draft coming off an injury when you only played 3 or 4 games. So maybe at least for Texas A&M, it was a blessing in disguise because you got a much better chance to do some things this year. And Ainias Smith is a huge part of that.
Devon Achane. I guess that's how he pronounces it now. I was going on A-Chain.
Well, he told us A-Chain.
And now it's Achane? Did he switch it?
Hey, you know what? You go out and get 280 yards. I'll call you whatever you want.
Exactly. But he has moved on to the NFL with Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins now. But as we know, A&M has recruited well at the running back position between Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels, Ruben Owens. That appears to be showing up during the early stages of the current season, that they have a stable that they can lean on.
Yeah, Le'Veon did not play. I think it was had a minor injury against Miami. Boy, they could have sure used him. He has really emerged the last two games. I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head, but I think he had 97 on maybe 15 carries against Auburn, and then he followed that up with 100 and I want to say 103 or 107 against Arkansas. Runs hard all the time, does have the ability to make a big play. Had a 30-yard run against Arkansas, 36 against Auburn. But what he's really good at is, man, you need 1 yard. He might get you 6, but he's that guy that you need to turn to when you need that tough yardage, because he's a big old tough guy. I know Alabama wanted him. I know LSU wanted him, and A&M was fortunate enough to pry him out of the state of Louisiana, and they're counting their blessings over him.
Yeah, he was committed at least to Alabama at one point. I remember during that recruitment of his. Let me ask you this though: if A&M struggles to run the ball at this Alabama defense on Saturday, is this an Aggie offensive line that can hold up in protecting Max Johnson? We talked about it earlier. If one or both of these offenses become one-dimensional, tell me about this A&M OL as far as being able to protect.
Yeah, it's getting better, and it has to, because quite frankly, it was a bust that resulted in Connor Wigman, getting hurt and out for the year. The guy didn't come off of a double team like he should have and pick up a blitzing safety, and the guy had a direct shot at him. But they looked a lot better against Arkansas. Now, is Arkansas going to be as good as Alabama? No. They haven't given up a ton of sacks this year, but at the same time, you just don't feel like that. That they're stonewalled on a pass rush either. Sometimes Max has had to scramble. Sometimes he's just stayed in there and with guys flying around him and made a good throw. But it could be better. But and quite frankly, I think they're better at pass protection than they are run blocking. So, but it's a line that's coming along. They got a lot of young guys in it, like they seem to always do. I don't know why they're always having so many young guys, but I would say that would be an area of concern for A&M.
Hey, I did a good job a couple of years ago keeping Will Anderson pretty much at bay in College Station in
And
that
that guy
upset.
can't get on and that guy can't. That was Ruben Fothery playing right, and he can't get on the
Mhm.
field now. That's why
Wow,
so now they're
interesting.
starting a true freshman there in Chase Pasantes, where you would think, hey, now we got a guy that's actually played well against Will Anderson of all people, and he's a junior now. You would think that guy. Now he's had some injury issues, but you would think that guy would be. It'd be time to really lean on a guy like that. But no, it's a true freshman out there at right tackle.
You talked about it a little bit too with Max Johnson, just watching him going back to his days at LSU. You're right. He's not Michael Vick. He's left-handed. He's not Michael Vick. But when the time comes, especially it seems like in critical moments or in third downs and 5 or 6, he's a guy that can go get it with his legs, and he's not afraid to go get it
No,
with his legs.
he's not. In fact, I think they'd probably encourage him to not try to get as much. Last week he had about a 35-yard scramble, but he took a big hit at the end of it. And then he actually fumbled on another run where he would have gotten the first down, but the guy hit right on the ball. So you got to be more careful with that. But I think at this point, when your backup now is a transfer from Fresno State that we haven't seen, that, and the guy behind him is a true freshman, that you're probably thinking, let's discretion over valor and try to stay healthy. But yes, he has that ability. He's a better athlete, a better runner than you might give him credit for, than I would have given him credit for. And he's a big tough kid. You'd expect that, with his lineage.
Absolutely. Big
Yeah.
bad Brad Johnson, former NFL quarterback Max and Jake Johnson's father. See him a lot of times at those A&M games.
Sometimes
Defensively,
with his shirt on.
yeah, yeah,
I'm
he's
sure you heard
I
that
wouldn't mess
story.
with Brad Johnson,
You heard
you
that
know?
story, though, right?
Yeah,
When he ripped his shirt off in celebration when Brad threw the touchdown pass. I mean, when Max threw the touchdown pass to Jake against Auburn.
Johnson and Johnson. It's
Yeah,
more
it
than
was
just
the
baby
same
powder.
thing with no
Yeah.
shirt. Yeah, Yeah. So
Absolutely.
anyway, yeah. So that's he son of an NFL quarterback. You expect to be, tough and savvy.
Absolutely. Defensively, this A&M defense leads the SEC in total defense. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Negative play production in wins over Auburn and Arkansas the last 2 weeks. Absolutely off the charts. Linebacker, defensive end. He kind of reminds me of the jack position that Alabama uses with Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell. Jaron Cooper already has 10 tackles for loss and 6 sacks in 5 games, with 6 and 4 of those respectively coming in the last 2 weeks. But I think it's those former 5 stars that A&M landed up front to go along with a veteran in McKinley Jackson
Mhm.
that has a lot to do with A&M's defense being where it is right now.
Yeah, that line is really good. Walter Nolan, 5-star guy, last year played a lot as a freshman because he had to, and now he's playing like the kind of guy you expected him to be. And then he's right there next to McKinley Jackson, who's been a really good player here for a long time. Uh, Shamar Turner is a guy that's he's a big enough guy to move inside or outside, probably going to play on the end, and he might be have been their best player so far. I know Cole Kubelek has said that he thinks he's the best defensive player in America. That's high praise from a guy smarter than me. I don't know if he's that, but I know he's playing really well. And then you might remember Fidel Diggs last year. He had a big game against Alabama and then got
Mhm.
hurt the next week. And so that pretty much completes that front four. And a lot of times they drop one guy off and put an end in coverage, which I can't figure out why they're doing that. But and then when you mentioned Edger and Cooper, and that's kind of goes back to what I was saying, how they've decided to get uh, more aggressive, and that hurt them one play last week against Arkansas. They were able to,
Screen.
yeah, they had a screen to Rocket Sanders for about 38 yards. Uh, but beyond that, A&M kind of handled the Arkansas pass protection and didn't get really burned. So it starts up front, but it usually does. And A&M's linebacker play last year was atrocious. Edrin Cooper was in his first year as a starter, and it looked like it. And they were having trouble at the other spot. Well, they got a true freshman, Torian York, that's come in and played. He's been a starter since day one, and he's played really well. Just knows how to play linebacker. And then Edrin has really made a step forward. But let's not kid ourselves. One of the big reasons they're playing well is because of the havoc those 4 and 5-star guys, those guys who are 4 and 5-star recruits, what they're causing up front is really making things easier for the linebackers.
Yeah, it seemed like in last year's game in Tuscaloosa, Alabama took advantage of that linebacker play and rushing for nearly 300 yards. They were able to get Jameer Gibbs kind of going east and west, and then he would plant his foot and win some one-on-ones there at the second level. So I'm sure after giving up that type of total to the Alabama run game a year ago, this will be a very motivated A&M front seven on Saturday. On the back end, you got a group led by, I guess, Damani Richardson, who he's been at A&M so long, Owen, that he intercepted Tua Tagovailoa in
He
College Station in
did.
2019. That's how long this guy's been at A&M. And he got Bryce Young
Yeah,
in the
this
same
is
end zone, I want to say, in the
he did.
game 2 years ago. I mean,
Yeah, he did.
AARP All-American, Damani
He
Richardson.
That's a pretty good line. Yeah, he's in his 5th year, and I think that, to be honest, his draft stock, his draft grade might not have been what he wanted it to be, and he thought, why don't I come back? And since you might have heard that, some of those A&M guys get some nice NIL deals, and he probably got one. And
Sure.
so it probably he thought, hey, I can get an NIL deal, and at the same time, I can have a chance to boost my draft status. And so he made a business decision to come back. And quite frankly, I think he's not playing well yet as well as he has in the past. I don't know what that's about. Maybe it's just some bad luck or whatever. But I know they'd still rather have him out there than not. But he can play better than he's shown so far.
Yeah, it was a secondary that really got torched by Tyler Van Dyke in week 2. Looked improved against KJ Jefferson in that Arkansas offense last week. That being said, is the pass rush still A&M's best form of pass defense this week? And how do you kind of envision A&M going about Jalen Milroe with his legs and the potential
Right.
for him to run? Do they bring 4? Because, like you said, watching the Arkansas game, it seemed like they had more success when they brought the extra guy against
Mhm.
KJ Jefferson.
Yeah, I think that you have to. You're going to start out trying to bring 4 and maybe even 3 and see what you got. Right. See if you can, because it seems. Look, I don't watch Alabama every game. I can't, and I don't have time to go back and watch all the games. But I understand, and you could tell me if or not better than I could ever know that Alabama's had some issues in protection, so they
Mm-hmm.
might kind of test it out. I do think that they're going to still bring pressure. And of course, like everybody's going to do, you're going to have a spy. So that's going to take a guy out of coverage, but you have to do that. Look, Jalen causes problems. We knew that. Hell, he's a Katy kid. He's from an hour from here. Everybody knows about Jalen and what kind of problems he can pose for you. Um, it's a pick your poison kind of deal. Do I want to take my chances of him throwing the ball deep where I've had some issues in coverage? Now, one of those long touchdown passes against by Miami was against a true freshman that they hadn't put him out there at corner by himself anymore. Uh, but they've had some issues in coverage. So do you want to take your chance with that, or do I want to try to rush him and just in case he gets by, have a spy that hopefully can track him down? Because we all know the worst situation is to put an open field runner in the open field, and Jalen is that. And if he's in the pocket, I think you feel pretty good about your chances. But man, if he starts to scramble, you're holding your breath.
Absolutely. I won't drag you too far down the special teams road. We've already talked about Ainias Smith and the impact he makes there. Kool-Aid McKinstry for Alabama also in the punt return game. He's had a few muffs here in the last 3 weeks, but you also know he's very capable of housing a return or two. And then these kickers, I think both these kickers, Will Reichard for Alabama, A&M with Randy Bond, both in good shape. Who knows? No, Olin, we may be coming down to another kick in College Station for the second
Well,
meeting in a row.
yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, Randy's fine. Randy's fine. He missed a couple long ones last week. He's fine. Reichard's better. So if it comes down to a kick, of course, everybody at A&M's going to hope it's A&M kicking. I will say this: why wouldn't it come down to a final play or final minute? Because A&M no longer goes to play Alabama with trying to convince yourself you're not scared to play them or that you're as good as they are. I think there's been some times in the past that they knew they were beat before they got there and they were just hoping to win, hoping for the best. Maybe Alabama would make a mistake or not play as well. I think A&M feels now that they can win the game and that they have as much talent as Alabama. So I think the last 2 years, great games, nail biters, and why wouldn't this one be the same way? But I'll admit, if it came down to the last play field goal, that's an advantage to Alabama. So you hope it's not Alabama kicking it if you're an Aggie, because does Reichard even miss?
He hasn't. He's made like 24 straight. So now we've jinxed him. So it'll be
Well, I
our
hope
fault.
so. Because you know what, Alabama special teams have been a big problem for A&M. Now A&M's had their moments too.
Alabama blocked a punt for a touchdown the
They
last
sure
time it
did.
was in College
And
Station.
then of course A-Chain brought it back
And A-Chain had the big
A&M's
return to
their
answer it.
issues too. But Alabama just, you know what it is with it's I shouldn't just say special, it's not offensive touchdowns. They feast
Mhm.
on non-offensive touchdowns against A&M in the past. Alabama is this spider, and A&M has always been that fly that gets stuck in the web by doing something wrong, and Alabama just sucks the blood out of it. So maybe if A&M can avoid the giving up the special teams touchdown or the turnover that goes, maybe then we can see, just another classic football game.
Yeah, I don't see this being a shootout unless there are like multiple
Right.
non-offensive touchdowns. I think both these lines of scrimmage are going to be tough to deal with, and
Kind of like
with an
LSU in
emphasis on the
2009.
front sevens. I don't know if it'll be 9-6 in overtime, but I don't know if the winner needs to score much more than maybe 24 or so. But
Just like
man,
last year.
yeah, exactly. 24-20 game last year. I could see it the same way this year, one way or the other. Hey, Olin, man, thanks for taking the time with us
Oh
here
man,
on the other
anytime.
side. It's been great catching up. You're
I
always a
have
wealth of knowledge and insight.
Well, I have leaned on your expertise of Alabama many times in the past, so it was my pleasure to pay at least a little bit of that back and have this conversation with you. I enjoyed it.
Hey, here for you anytime. Love doing it. So for Olin Buchanan of TexAgs.com, Travis Reier, thanking you for joining us here on the other side. Stay tuned to more coverage of Alabama football on the YouTube home for BamaOnline.com. Also, the Bama Online podcast. And of course, right there at BamaOnline.com as well. Until next time, so long, everybody.